what happens when your phone goes out. Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. This is one of our wonderful art talks. I'm Sue Koletsky, the museum director of the Temple Museum of Jewish Art, Religion, and Culture at the Temple-Tifereth, Israel. And we've been doing art talks for many, many months now through Zoom. And I want to thank Jen Mendelson, who's our host, our operations director, and she's been very instrumental in making sure that these Zoom calls are great. And I want to introduce our featured speaker today, Jane Rothstein, who has been our temple archivist for many years. We've been working together on our own temple archives. And she today is going to be talking about some of the really unusual things that are in the temple archives, as well as giving us some really good ideas as to how to keep our personal archives, our family histories in order, and certainly in ways that we can pass these beautiful documents and photographs down to our next generations and share them and share all of our stories. So Jane has all sorts of wonderful degrees, and she can tell you about her schooling. I know that she just is a fabulous human being and person, and she's very, very excited about keeping records and making sure that we share everything together in a very organized way. So I want to introduce Jane.
Mute. Hi, everyone. Thank you for having me today. Hi, Mom. My mom's here. I'm in my new home. I just moved about a month ago, so things are still a little hectic in here. And I'm gonna do screen share for part of the time. So you can see PowerPoint presentation I have. And then I'm also going to unshare it at times so I can show you some of the things that I have here at home from my own collection. Let me go to screen share, and there it is. And there we go. Slideshow, play from the start. Okay. Yay. Can you see it? Can everyone see this? Excellent. So calling it treasures from the temple archives and in your home. So as you know, most of the records that we have in the temple archives are the records of our congregation as a whole. But we do have some interesting personal items that really kind of ended up there by happenstance, which happens a lot with archives. Sometimes we collect things on purpose, and sometimes we sort of find things that are interesting, but we don't want to give them away. So we do have a few family history documents, things that we would think about as family personal documents in the archives that are related to individuals who were members or leaders in the congregation. So for example, we have this great naturalization document from 1871. Joseph Oppenheimer was a prominent member of the congregation around 1900. He came to the United States from Germany, from Hesse-Darmstadt, you may be able to see there. And he was in Massillon for a while. You can see that this was naturalized at the probate court in Stark County, and then came to Cleveland, moved his business to Cleveland along with a couple of his brothers, who also, the whole family became very active at the temple. So this is one thing. Then we have this cool letter to Effie Oppenheimer, who's Joseph's niece. Her father was Max. And Effie Oppenheimer, later Effie Vactor, was very, very active in the Jewish community at the temple and more generally. Among other things, she edited the women's page for a number of years for the Jewish Independent, one of the predecessors of the Cleveland Jewish News. And this letter is from the mayor of Cleveland, W.S. Fitzgerald, inviting Effie in 1921 to be part of a group of 100 prominent citizens to welcome Chaim Weizmann and Albert Einstein to Cleveland. They were coming to talk about the establishment of a Jewish state. And so Effie was invited. I don't know how it ended up in our records, but it's very cool that we have it. Then we have, we're really used to seeing the Silvers, Rabbi Abba Hillel Silver in portraits, but we actually also have some family photos. So we have Abba playing golf at Oakwood and with Mrs. Silver up at an upstate New York retreat in the 50s. And then down below with his sons, Daniel and Raphael, that's probably in front of, they think they were living in Shaker at the time, so it's probably in front of their house. We have, oh, come on. Uh-oh, what's wrong? There we go. So we have some interesting old books, among them this Haggadah from the 1860s, which when you open the last few pages, someone from the Goldsmith family decided to make it into something like their version of a family Bible. So they have recorded several family members' names with birth and death dates. So cool little thing that's in there. We have Morris Ullman was one of the early presidents of the congregation for a couple of years in the 1880s. This is his book from the fraternal organization he was part of, the Alten Orden der Guten Brüder, which is the old or probably ancient order of the Good Brothers. And on the right, you can see in the inside, in one of the inside pages where we shows that it belonged to him, that he was in, what lodge number he was in. And I think to me that looks like the name of the lodge is maybe the Liberty Lodge. This is a German, probably mostly German Jewish organization, but it shows like when it was given to him and who helped him, who sponsored him in the lodge. And then this is a very common thing around World War II. The US government printing office published this small edition of the Jewish Holy Scriptures. It was given to every Jewish service member in the armed forces in 1941. You can see it was sort of robo-signed by Franklin Roosevelt, the commander-in-chief. And so we ended up with one in our collection. And then, show you some sort of comparable family documents from my own family's collection. So I have my paternal grandmother's citizenship certificate. I have some letters that my maternal grandmother wrote to her husband during World War II. This is one of my favorite pieces of ephemera. My grandmother's great uncle, who was really just about the same age as her mother, for many years owned a large dance hall in New York City, the Orpheum. And she would go to visit him a lot. He would come back to Cleveland. He was born in Cleveland and actually passed away as a member of the congregation, is buried at Mayfield. So this is a pamphlet probably from the 20s. And as you can see on the right-hand side, he has pictures of what he says are 3 of their many charming dance hostesses. But actually, the woman on the bottom who's listed as Ellen Pearson is actually my grandmother. So it's actually Jean Newman Friedman down there. So fun, curious things like this. Then I have 3 books: my grandfather's Masonic Bible, the confirmation, the prayer book that my mother was given at her confirmation, and the prayer book that I was given when I was bat mitzvahed. So everyone, we all probably have certain things like this that you don't really think about. Like I really never thought about the prayer book I got when I was bat mitzvahed until, the last few years when I was like, oh, I have other things too that are similar to these, and someone might be interested in this at some point. This is another book that Jewish servicemen got, the National Jewish Welfare Board printed up. This is my grandfather's copy. So I want to say that many of us, probably most of us, have all kinds of things like this around. And if we want to create our own family archives to preserve some of these things, it's really an amazing act of love for your family and for future generations. And I have to say, it's a great pandemic. It's a great quarantine thing to do. First, what do you want to consider when creating your own family archives? What do you what to preserve? Because there are all kinds of things that you can think of. All of us probably have a lot of family photographs, but we could also have things like recipe books, different kinds of books, scrapbooks, autograph books, ephemera like that pamphlet I showed you, letters, maybe you have citizenship or naturalization records or military service records. Maybe you have some recordings, audio or video recordings of different family members telling their stories. And you probably also have artifacts that you don't really think about, but maybe you have your grandmother's candlesticks or a menorah that's been in your family, or a tea set. Those are things that you might think about as not just objects that you have, but things that you might want to think of, preserve in a collection as part of a collection. And then why organize, arrange your collection and call it a collection, and think about it as an archive, as your own personal archives. It could be really meaningful to you to have something like that to work on. You might find that it just has cool things and it's really interesting. You can be enriched by it, and you can enrich others, you can inspire other people. You can save your family memories for future generations. You have a way of passing on people's different experiences and talking about what kinds of traditions you have in your family. You can help other people in your family understand, part of where they come from. Your family's history is part of the history of your community. So it's not really just your family's history, but it's something that can be shared and that other people can connect to. And you can also help yourself and help others understand your history in the broader historical context. So in doing this, you may learn more about immigration. You might learn more about the early history of Cleveland. You might learn, and then it becomes even more meaningful when you can make that connection. You can understand your family with it in the lived experience of different historical periods. So what should you do? What are the steps you should take? Well, first step is thinking, what do you have? Because we probably all have different things. Maybe they're in different areas. Maybe you have some things from one family member, other things from different family members. So you might have photographs or letters or scrapbooks or objects, or you might even have, like, maybe one of your relatives had a real admiration for Abraham Lincoln. And so you have all these Abraham Lincoln related things. And so you may consider, like, maybe that is worth saving because maybe it tells you something about that person who created that little collection. So there could be all kinds of things. You just have to think about what you have, and that will give you one place to start from. And then you want to make a plan. So what will you start with? A lot of archivists who work with families and individuals say, start with your physical objects or your physical documents. We all have a lot of digital documents now. We all have a lot of things that are digitized and a lot of things born digital, especially photographs. We probably all have hundreds of digital photographs. But I would say, don't start with them. Start with analog stuff, that is physical objects, paper, photographs. One, because they are easy to work with, and two, you might learn something that then when you go to do your digital stuff, you will have a better handle on then. But you also want to start with something that's concrete. Like you might have a lot of things in your collection, but maybe you want to start with just one collection of correspondence, just to get a handle on things. Unless you have something that's a fragile item that's really falling apart, and you absolutely have to digitize it, otherwise you really can't work with it, then you might want to digitize that first, but otherwise start with that later. So what supplies do you need? You need things that will help you both preserve and store and organize your items. So we use acid-free and lignin-free boxes, folders, and paper. So you also, if you want to write on the back of photographs, don't use a number 2 pencil, don't use a pen. Keep your pen away, far, far, far away from all your archival material. Get a 6B graphite pencil. It's much softer for writing on the back of photographs to identify people. For organization, you want to think about what kinds of boxes. There are boxes of all different sizes and shapes. So you want to think of what you have and what kind of box you're going to need for that, what items fit where. You also want to think about how often something might be handled or what kind of condition it's in. If something's more fragile, you may need to think about housing it. You may need other kinds of things to stabilize it and house it in a particular way. Where do you find supplies? So you actually, somewhat surprisingly, to me anyway, there are some things you can get locally. For example, the Container Store actually has a number of archival boxes. If you go to their website and just type in archival, it will bring up a number of different size boxes and other supplies that you might need, as well as things to store and display objects in that are of archival quality. You might also go to an art supply store like Blick, which is on Mayfield near Coventry. There you can get your pencils. They also have some boxes. They also have acid-free, different kinds of acid-free papers, tissue papers, things like that. Otherwise, you'll want to go online to a number of specialty companies. Gaylord Archival and Hollinger Metal Edge are probably two of the most prominent, but there are others as well. And I'm happy to pass along resources. I didn't really include them here, but I'm happy to pass that along. You want to think about what space in your house or your apartment you're going to be working in, because you want to have a space that you can either clear it of everything else and just be able to spread out your project, that it's clean, that you don't have anything else going on, that you're not going to put food on or drink on, or you're going to need both to have a big space like that where you can work, and then another space where you can store things while you use your workspace for something else. But you want to figure out a space where you can work, and you want to set that up so that you're not, so you have a large space to spread out in, that way you won't lose things by putting other things on top of them, or damage things by putting other things on top of them. You want to have a space where you can work. You want to think about when you're going to work on your project. That is, you want to think about the fact that you're going to have to devote some time to this. And so you want to say, like, okay, I'm going to devote, I have all of this time. I have a week and I can devote the whole week to it. But maybe you just have a couple of hours a day or a couple of hours a week. But you want to think about how much time you're going to have to put into it, and schedule that in. And you want to think about how you're going to process that collection. And what does processing mean? Processing has a lot of steps. It's both arranging your material and describing your material, and then creating something that will help you share that material with other people. So step 3 is processing. First, wash your hands with soap and water. Even if your hands are really dry, or, even if you think that, they're clean because you've come from here and then gone there and then gone here. But before that, you wash your hands. Wash your hands with soap and water before you sit down to work. Handle all the items with care. They might be fragile. Maybe they don't look fragile, but they might be fragile, and you want to err on the side of caution. Photographs you want to handle by their edges. You might, especially with photograph, think about using disposable nitrile gloves. Classically, people talked about using cotton gloves. Those can be really hard to work with. They don't always fit your hand very well, and they can actually project more lint or something onto photographs. So nitrile gloves are the way to go, and you can usually get those at a drugstore. And you want to think about, how is your collection already organized? Did you get a bundle of things from somebody and it was already in some kind of organization that they had? Or maybe they just threw a bunch of stuff in the box and it is not organized. And what do you do if it's not organized? Because this is one of the primary ways in which you're going to be able to understand your collection and share it with other people. So if it's not organized, then you're going to have to think about a logical way to do that. So maybe you have stuff from multiple sides of your family, and so you decide you're going to put, all of the, for example, all the Rothstein stuff will be here and all the Friedman stuff will be there. Or, maybe it's everything from one part of the family, but there are the majority of things that pertain to one individual or not. Maybe it's all just the family and you just need to think of a way to do it. One way that, if you have a large collection of things that are unorganized, one foolproof way to do it, if you just want to have one, say you just have a collection of photographs. Chronological is a great way to go. Start with your oldest things and work up to your most recent things, or do it backwards. Maybe the most recent things, so do those first. And never let your cat organize stuff for you. It won't work out well. As you go through everything, you want to take notes. You want to know who you want to write down what you know about that object. Maybe you have a question about that item. Maybe you've noticed that, these are this grandfather's military records, and somewhere else you have your other grandfather's military records, or your father's or something. Make a note of that these are military things, because maybe at some point you'll want to pull out everybody's military stuff. And so you'll know that that's there. With photographs, you want to take a lot of notes on those, because unlike documents which have words, which can be a little self-explanatory, photographs, you need to attach more data to them, more what we call metadata, data that's about the this piece of information, this photograph. So you need to think about who's in it, when was it taken, where was it taken, what was the occasion, who's that person, who are they sitting next to, when was it taken, I know that because it's written on the back. Or maybe you need to figure that out, so you'll pay attention to, look at what they're wearing, look at their hairstyle, look at the decor of the space. Or maybe from something else that your grandmother wore those particular glasses in the early 60s. So this must be in the early 60s because she's wearing those glasses. And what was going on? What's the occasion? They're dressed up. I don't know what the occasion is, but they were a little dressed up. So maybe it was, a night out with friends and they've just come home, or maybe they're just going out. And then you want to think about how you're going to store your photographs and your other kinds of records. Photographs are especially challenging because they come in so many different sizes. So I'm going to stop the share and I'll show you some of what I have in on my table to show you. Hi. So I'm going to turn this a little bit. So I have things that are stored in various different means. I have a large oversized box here. It's not very well organized, but right now it has all the oversized stuff because I have large photos like this. This is my dad's graduation photo from Wiley Junior High School, January 1958, and all the notes that his friends wrote on it. So that has to go in one size box. Then I have other objects that are like this size that go in this size box. So I put them in folders, I label the folders, and then they sit going up. I also, one of the objects I want to show you are, these are my dad's curls from his first haircut. My grandmother wouldn't cut his hair until his father came home from the service. But then maybe most of you, like I do, the greatest number of photographs we have are snapshots that are like this size. And they might be from many different time periods. So, this is a photo postcard from the turn of the century. These are from the 80s. And then there's this little photo booklet. That's my mom, which is from the 50s, I believe. And so after thinking about it for a long time, it didn't seem practical to put them in a standard archival folder because, one, I have a lot of them. Two, they're so small that they wouldn't stay. There's a chance that they might fall out of the folder once I handled it. So what I decided to do is to get this, which is a square box that has a lid. And what I put in there are all these little photo envelopes. And this is specifically made for photos this size. A lot of people, I don't tend to write a lot on the back of my photos, but I know a lot of people do, in which case you should write as little as you can and use one of those soft 6B graphite pencils. But I wrote on the back of each one, I gave each one a number. I put 2 photos back to back, and then I put took those 2 photos in an envelope, and I wrote the number of each photo on the front of the envelope. So I know where it goes. I've tried to do it chronologically. It's not completely well done, so at some point I'll probably want to go and futz around with it a little bit. But I have probably about 500 envelopes in this box. It can hold that many. So, if you're like me and you just have hundreds and hundreds of snapshots from like all of the various different parts of your family, that's a really good way to store it. You can put a lot in a smaller space and they stay safe. And these are acid-free folders, acid-free, lignin-free folders specifically made for storing photographs. And there are different ways you can store photographs too. You can put them in between archival grade polyethylene or polypropylene sleeves. When I store photographs in an envelope like this, larger ones, I have the photograph, my dad, and then between each photograph, I have a sheet of acid-free, lignin-free paper so that there's another photograph there. And I do that for the same reason that I store these photos back to back. Because sometimes there's sticky stuff on the back of that photo and you don't want it to get on the next photo. You're trying to preserve these photos, so you want to take as good a care as them as possible. They're coming out of various things, especially if you're removing photos from one of these so-called magnetic photo albums that we all used in the 60s and 70s and 80s, where you open the sheet and you stuff the photo in and then you do it back. Those are really, really bad for your photos. But you can take them out. You might have sticky stuff on the back though, so use something to buffer those. I'll try and go back to sharing. Let's see. Okay. Okay, there we go. So, it's not tricky. You just need the right supplies. Now, at some point, you will want to deal with your digital images and videos and your electronic documents, your born digital documents. And in a lot of ways, you're going to process them in the same way as your analog or physical records, because you're still going to want to identify people. You're still going to want to organize, have them organized in a way that makes sense. It's different because there are technological considerations in terms of preservation and storage that differ from the physical objects. You need your computer or another another piece of electronics to view those documents, so they're different. I just plopped up here an example of a born digital image document, which is actually really a third generation. It's not really an original document. So it's a screen save I took of a Facebook post that one of my cousins made when her daughter was born. So what she did is she took a digital image of her daughter. So that was document one. Then she posted it to Facebook. So then there's that, digital object number two. And then I took a screenshot of that. So it's like a document of a document of a document. But that's a whole new thing. But she's adorable. She's one now. She's awesome. And then again, what about digitizing? Digitizing is a great way to share things, and I'll talk about that a little bit later. It's something you should think about doing after you've, like I said before, after you've arranged your physical items, unless there's something that's really falling apart that's urgent. Storing your collection. You want to find someplace if you're keeping this in your home, really anywhere, you're going to find place that's safe to store it. You want it to be as consistent median temperature and humidity as possible. So, sorry, Mom, don't put them in your attic, your storage space, or your basement, unless your basement, like the basement at the temple, has its own properly temperature and humidity controlled space. Don't put it next to a window or an outside wall. Don't put it in direct sunlight. You don't want the heat and the cold to affect it. You don't want to get a lot of dust or dirt from the outside. An outside wall is more likely to have a lot of changes in temperature that are not good for your records, especially your photographs. And don't put them in a busy space where there's lots of other things going on. So, if you're putting them in a closet that you use for a lot of other things, maybe put them, to their own side. Again, so you're not disturbing them, so that they won't, turn out like this image. And then sharing your collection. So archivists always talk about our mission as a few things. One is we collect records, we preserve them, we arrange and describe them, and then we share them. And sharing your documents, your records, your photographs, your artifacts, whatever, is like one of the main reasons why we do it. In archives, we usually talk about the way that there's a challenge to both emphasizing preservation and sharing, because when you share, an object, there's a chance that it might get damaged, that it might get dirty, it's one more step in, sometimes a physical breakdown of that object. But if we don't do it, then what's the point of having then saving all of those precious things? They only, in the same way that we need to think about historical context in order to make sense of an individual item, an individual document or photograph or what have you, we need other people around in order to, what good is knowing the history if we can't share it with other people, if we can't inspire other people, hear their questions and their comments and, that kind of thing. So sharing you can do in a couple of ways: displaying your objects. So I don't know, my menorah that I got as a kid, it's probably not very, is not archivally stored or displayed. It's just sort of sitting on my bookshelf. But right now it's only of meaning to me. So who knows what my relatives will do with it. And then down is an image actually from the Container Store of one of their objects in a case. But again, if you're going to display things, don't put them in an area that has a lot of sun. The sun and UV light can really, it can cause things to fade. It puts stress on documents, especially in objects. Put them in a case or a cabinet that protects the objects from dust and other particles. If you're getting something framed, one, think about why you're getting that particular thing framed. It's one thing if it's a museum, it's another if it's in your living room. I say that because maybe instead of framing the original, you might want to frame a printout of a digital surrogate. But if you do get something framed, make sure that you have glass that's protects from UV light, that uses quality, archival quality material, that's done by a professional who's experienced in doing museum quality work. Because the reason that you're framing it or displaying it is because you want to share it, but at the same time you do want to preserve it. So balancing those two things. Digitizing is again another way to share things, because while you might not want to pass from hand to hand the photograph of your grandfather as a little boy, if you've digitized it and made copies of it, then you can give someone a copy. You can email someone a copy. You can put it in a book and share it. And that way you're both sharing the content of that item, the photograph or the document, and you're protecting the original so that that can be safe and live on. There's one thing I was going to get back to. Oh, I also just want to say that this is a process. When I'm doing something in our archives, like I am extremely focused on, getting it right, getting the organization right, getting my notes right in terms of what I know about that particular item. But in the real world, in our own homes, we don't always do those things all the time. So for example, I have these wonderful teacups from one of my grandmothers that I've had in a box for a million years while I moved from apartment to apartment, and which I just unpacked. And right now they're just sort of sitting out on a shelf. Well, that's really not the ideal way to do it. At some point, I, will want to like get a nice cabinet to put them in so I can display them and share them because they're lovely. But that's not happening right now. Like I said, I have one oversized box that I keep oversized photos in. It's not particularly well arranged. It has some other things in it that are oversized that are not my family history stuff, but that I want to preserve. But at some point, I will do that. So, and you don't have to do everything at one time. It's good to start small, and it's good also to like be forgiving of yourself. This is very much a process, and the process is just as important as the product that you do it, that you are going to have, which is a finished, organized collection to share with other people. And part of the reason why it's not going to be perfect is you're going to do this, and on the way, you're just going to fall in love with the objects, the items, the documents, the photos that you look at, because there's just a lot of really cool stuff there. And that's great. You'll learn more about things on the way. Just you'll know when you like clean up for the day that you have to put your things away, and not just because your mom said so, but because you've become the caretaker of these precious items. We're the caretakers, and that's a wonderful thing. That's a wonderful thing to be. So that's all I have for you right now. If Sue and Jen are up for moderating questions, I'm happy to answer questions.
Jane, this was awesome. I'm so happy that you explained all of this in detail. It was awesome, but also inspirational. And in full disclosure, when I was asking you if you would be interested in doing this, it was because I had a family project that I wanted to do during the pandemic, and I thought others probably did too. And I'm wondering if we have questions, and we definitely want you to unmute and ask questions of Jane. But I also am curious if people do have projects, maybe we could get a small group or a large group together and start doing a little bit of our own family history documentation and conservation. So it's just an idea.
Yeah.
Who has a question for Jane?
I do.
Go for it.
Should I start or someone else?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
Hi, Margie.
It took me the whole time to get on the computer. I'm so glad I'm on. I was doing it on my phone. Yeah, a few things. One, when you have fragile, like newspaper clipping or perhaps a letter that's fragile, is it okay to, how do you feel about laminating something?
Don't laminate. Do not laminate. All archivists will tell you. One, because it then, especially like I have a laminated newspaper clipping from a long time ago that I did not laminate, but it doesn't stop it from, like if it's a newspaper clipping, it doesn't stop it from deteriorating because of the acid that's in there. And there's every chance that you could trap in there all kinds of dirt and particles that you're not, that you don't want to trap in there. The other thing is that it's irreversible. And in archives, all the preservation things that we do, we don't want to do something that's irreversible. So like that laminated article, I can never take it out of the lamination to do something better with it. For a newspaper article, there are two things that I would want to do. If you are bent on keeping the original, put it in between two pieces of acid-free paper. That's one of the best things you can do for it, because the acid-free paper it's not going to take away the acid, but it's going to help keep it off of whatever you put next to it. The other thing you might want to consider doing is to make a photocopy of that article onto acid-free paper. that might give you the same thing. It's a challenge because, are you keeping it because that article, was cut out and kept, and, it's interesting to see the original. But you have to recognize that that's, has a possibility of disintegrating. So there are sleeves that you can put, like polyethylene and polypropylene sleeves that you can put delicate things in, that you can get from an archival supply company if you choose to do that. And it's the same thing with a delicate letter. Put it in between some acid-free paper, maybe put it in its own folder so that it's not going to, get torn up by other things. Or, put it in one of these sleeves. The other thing that, this is one of the things that digitization is good for. You digitize it one time, you can put that original someplace safe, and then you have the proxy, it's not what it's called, the surrogate, a digital facsimile, yes, to be able to share it with. But don't laminate, because then if there's something else you could do better, you'll never be able to change it.
Good advice. I only did it once with a letter from someone in Europe to my father, thanking him for the war. But so are the folders and envelopes all available through you mentioned Gaylord Archival? Yeah,
Gaylord Archival and Hollinger. There are other companies too. I'd be happy to send out a follow-up that has links with supply.
I have a question.
Sure, yeah.
I don't know if anyone else has experienced this. So I have a lot of family photos that they're not terribly old. They're from my growing up years, let's say. Well, maybe that's terribly old now, but they were taken with Kodachrome.
Yep.
The color film is, when I look back at these, unlike black and white photos from my parents' era, those are all crisp and great. And these color photos from, I don't know when you'd say, like the 60s, probably a lot of those, 70s, 60s and 70s, the colors aren't true anymore. They're all fading out. They're yellowing, and not from bad storage, just something where the photo itself.
It is, and it is a product of
film.
It's a product of the different time periods where the film companies used different chemicals and they just had different styles of doing those. So the chemistry changed. There are whole books about the different kinds of photographs. There are a more challenging preservation issue than paper documents. Yeah, I mean, I don't know in depth about the photos from that era, but yes, it's not because of, I mean, you still want to store them, but yeah, there is going to be some, fading. There's going to be some of that going on.
They're not the colors that they were. They're not true to life anymore in a large measure.
There are, I mean, color tones changed also. So, if you, even a Kodachrome picture from that era in its best its colors would still look different from like the color scheme that was used in the 90s. So yeah, it's just one of those things. There's yeah, so if you're interested in talking more in depth about that, I'd be happy to do that.
I mean, there's no way to sort of improve on them, restore them, so to speak, to
digital.
So sort of, I mean, you can get photos touched up, although they mostly do black and white like that. But there is software that you can use to restore a digital image. and I don't think you even have to be a professional to do that anymore. I've seen lots available just online, either for a fee or not. So that it could restore the color. It won't change the physical object, but if you do have a digital proxy, then you could update that.
Oh, that would be good, because I looked into having just one photo restored at Moto Photo,
Mhm.
and it wasn't even a very big photograph. It was really inexpensive. They wanted to charge $75 just to do this one photo.
I mean, this
And
is,
if you were trying to do an entire album, you're like, go broke.
yeah,
on it.
I wouldn't, and I personally wouldn't. It's one thing if you have a really old photo that, say, has tears across it or severe
Yes.
discoloration or something, then you may want to do a touch up on the physical object. But I think that there are so many things that you could do digitally to create a better version of that, an improved version of that original, that it's not worth it to go and to get a restoration of that physical object. Scan it with, using, high, there are settings that you can do that make it, more ones and zeros, higher resolution. And then there's software out there that either you or someone else can use to improve the quality of it. I don't think that it's generally worth for a snapshot, to do that, when there are other ways that you can do it.
All right, I'll do a little research.
Okay, I'm happy to talk with you more if you want to.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
I have a question.
Sure.
How do you remove the photographs from those old sticky albums without ripping the photos? Is there a way, or do you just?
Very carefully. I have my favorite, I don't have it here. My favorite tool that I have, that I used when I used in my professional work, and then as soon as I knew I was going to do stuff at home, I bought for myself. There's this little thing, it's called a micro spatula, and it's a metal tool. It's the size of like one of those dental mirrors they use, but they're like they're flat on each end, with different widths. So one's really small and one is a little bit larger, and it helps you get underneath the photograph. You want to do it very slowly and very carefully. And it helps you to get your photos off the sticky stuff. There's no guarantee, you might end up with some sticky still on there, in which case this is why you put it against a piece of paper. And you do have to be careful, because you could tear a photo, but there is a way to do that. You just have to use that kind of tool that helps you get into the small spaces and then go slowly and carefully. I found that most of the time things come up pretty easily, but there definitely are times where I'm just like, okay, let's get this next millimeter and this next millimeter. And yeah. What else?
Well, I do, but if someone else wants to go first, you can.
Okay, I have a question.
Yeah.
Okay.
I apologize. I joined a little bit late. Do you have any thoughts about companies like Legacy Box or anything like that, where you send them your all your photos and have them digitized?
I've never used a company like that. I know that my parents used something like that when they digitized their home movies, but I don't know what service they used. So I don't know. I don't know too much about them in terms of the quality of their work or the safety of sending stuff out or whatever. I'm mostly like, I don't want to send all my stuff away. But you know, that's me. And I'm also like, okay, I'll spend 3 hours digitizing all that. That's fine, you know. But so I don't know. Haven't used one, and I haven't really researched it. So I'm happy to do a little research on it, but I don't know enough to say whether that's a good, you know, which company is better. I do know, I mean, archives, not all archives have the capacity to do like their own large digitization projects. So archives also work with outside companies that do mass digitization for libraries and archives. And you know, when archives contract with an outside company, another vendor to do their digitization, they're sort of built into that, you know, like what's the quality control going to be like, you know, what are the parameters that they use for digitization, things like that, so that, you know, everybody knows in advance. I mean, you know, the good thing about those companies is that's what they do, you know, so that they know the software, they know the hardware, they know the process really well. You know, but you're also like putting your precious things in their hands. So yeah, I don't know. It's not a great answer, I know, but I just don't know enough about each one to do it.
Thank you. You're totally supporting everything I'm thinking.
Okay.
Especially in this time of not being sure how good the mail service is going to be. But, you know, it's something that we've been looking into.
Yeah. Yeah.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
So that relates to my question, because I've just gone through 4,000 slides.
Oh, whoa.
That was, I don't know, it was nostalgic to say the least, but
Yeah.
and I narrowed it down to about 600. So you know, those I feel with slides, I know I could buy software probably, but I'm apt to send it off. I've heard legacy is good, but you make a good point to ask as many questions as you can. And the other thing I wanted to ask you, I have about 200 letters my father wrote my mom, you know, during World War II, and they're each in the envelope with the Army censor stamp on the envelope. And I haven't figured out whether I should take the best, because they were censored. You couldn't say a whole lot early on.
Right.
And try to consider putting them in a book as a legacy for grandkids. Or if, you know, in the interim, I think I should just keep them in the envelopes. But what do you think?
If you don't have something else to keep all the moving parts together, then you might consider keeping them in the envelope. Generally, we take letters out of their envelopes, put the envelope first, and then put the letter that it belongs to afterwards. Because the more times you have to fold and unfold that piece of paper, you know, the weaker it's going to be at the point of the fold. So once you've flattened out the letter, then you don't have to worry about that as much anymore. But the envelopes can be fascinating in and of themselves. So yeah, my recommendation would be to keep them together, but take the letters out of their envelopes.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Anything else? Okay. Does anyone else have any questions?
No, one thing, and I apologize, I don't know if you talked about this, but are people aware that South Euclid Library has a whole area for scanning? And
they do. They have this wonderful, I can't remember what they call it, but the Mandel family helped to fund it. They have a whole room where you can use a scanner, you can digitize audio and video tapes. And you just need to be, you just need to have a library card, and then you need to sign up for an orientation. But then you can take all your own materials in there and do that. It's a really incredible resource. Yeah.
Yeah, and we took the class and it's very basic and
Yeah.
very simple, and
Yeah.
anybody can do it.
Yeah. They make it super easy. And they have other things there too, like if you're into 3D printing and stuff, but for preserving your family stuff, yeah, it's an amazing resource. We're really lucky to have
What
it.
do you get when you finish?
Yeah.
You get a CD?
I don't remember, but I think you need to either bring in a CD or a thumb drive or something like that to store your digital images on. I haven't been there in a while, so I don't remember if you can just upload them to the cloud, or, like if you have Google Photo or something like that. But I think you need to bring your own CD or thumb drive. That's my recollection. Yeah, but there's more information on that. It's at the South Euclid Lyndhurst branch. So there should be some more information on their website. If not, they're the people who do the orientations are super nice, really helpful. So
Jane, do you know anyone who can restore a video, a tape recording? I once interviewed my father and his brother on a mini recorder.
oh wow.
And I have it, but there must be companies out there that can do restoration, but I don't really know.
I don't know. There must be, but I haven't really looked into it. I'm happy to look into it with you or for you if you want, but I
love this particular one. I would.
Yeah.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Well, Jane, a few people have already on chat said that they would really love to have some more information about digitizing their collections. So maybe we should have a conversation and offer part 2 to this, since there's so much interest.
I'd be happy to. And I see my battery in my computer's running low. So I'd be happy to send out more information, talk with anybody about working on your family archives. Happy to. Yeah.
Good. Well, we will talk to you soon. Thank you
Okay.
so much.
Thank you, everybody. Thanks
Thank
for coming
you.
today.
Bye-bye.
Thank you
Bye.
very much, Jane.
Okay.
Wonderful.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye, Sue.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.